It's a traditional Japanese folk tale. I think the title is Urashima Taro, the name of the fisherman. And I'm going to tell you his tale. Urashima was a fisherman from a poor household in a small village in Japan. And one morning he was walking along the beach towards his boat when he saw a small group of boys worrying a little turtle. He shouted at the boys to stop, but they just gave him a load of cheek back. So he reached to his belt, he took out a few coins from his purse and offered the boys the coins to go and buy some sweets in trade for the turtle, which they willingly did. Once the boys had gone, Urashima stood and watched the turtle scurry off down to the sea, through the waves, and then start to swim through the calm ocean. Just before the turtle dived below the waves, it turned and looked at Urashima as if trying to set his image in his mind's eye, and then dived below the water. Urashima continued to his boat, stored his net under the seat, and pushed his boat out, took his oars and started to row. And as in all stories, he rowed and he rowed and he rowed. But he got to where he intended to fish and was just getting his net out when there was a knocking on the end of the boat. Looking over the end of the boat, to his surprise, the turtle was there. But to his bigger surprise, the turtle then spoke to him. The turtle said, "I'm the messenger of the Dragon King. And he's asked me to invite you to come and live on the island where summer never dies, as a reward for the kindness that you showed me this morning." Urashima took no time at all in saying yes, he would like to go. And the turtle started to swim away. Urashima took up the oars and rowed and followed him. The islands of Japan disappeared slowly below the horizon behind him, and an island he never saw before raised out of the sea, and the turtle took him to a small cove, where on the beach the prince and princess, the son and the daughter of the Dragon King, waited to greet him. They happened to be a similar age to Urashima, and they soon became firm friends, but their first job was to take him to his accommodation, to show him that there was clean clothes on the bed, a snack to eat, and suggested he rested a while before meeting them in the palace, where they would be his guide. So later that day, Urashima found himself in this splendid palace built of coral. If you can imagine coral, translucent, building a tower going up to the sky. Rooms too many to count, in colours of coral you hardly imagine, blues and greens and turquoises. But that wasn't the best bit about the palace. The pearls that decorated the coral, some so tiny you'd have trouble balancing them on a needle's end, others so big you'd probably not be able to lift them. But as splendid as the palace was, Urashima's favourite place on the island were the gardens. The island had 4 gardens, each taking up a quarter of the island. If you went to the centre of the island and you stood on an earth mound and looked to the north, forgot for a moment, looked to the north, you could see the winter garden with the bare trees bereft of leaves, the fir trees with the cones with a dusting of snow, log cabins with long icicles growing from the roof. They had large spiders' web that first thing in the morning were dusted with dew, frosted, which would glint in the sunlight. Turn to the east and you had the spring gardens, a carpet of flowers, vibrant in colours, the bluebells, the daffodils, the irises, with a faint whiff of wild garlic drifting on the air. But that wasn't the best thing about the spring gardens. The cherry trees with their blossom, the blossom so thick they looked like white walls. The blossom would drift off the trees and the scent would drift along with them to fill the entire garden. Turn again to the south and the summer gardens. The trees now are full green in their splendour with lots of shades. Flowers too numerous to count, but the roses were like walls with blooms so big of red and orange and white and blue. But Urashima's favourite thing about summer gardens were the wild strawberries that grew along the paths. Warmed by the summer sun, you could just pick and nibble on them as you explored the garden. Turn again to the west and you got the autumn garden. The trees now are golden colours, all different hue of gold and brown. The leaves drop into the floor so you could walk through them and just imagine the crinkling and the crackling as the leaves were crushed under your feet. They were truly a splendid place, and Urashima spent many hours and many days exploring those gardens. It came to the end of the 3rd week and he woke up one morning with a funny feeling in his tummy, a nervous feeling. And he realised that he'd left home and hadn't told his parents where he was going. They'd be worried sick. He wanted to go home and tell his mother to apologise that he'd been away for so long, to apologise to his friends that would be searching for him. He dressed quickly and rushed to the palace and found the prince and princess and explained what he wanted to do. They looked at him sadly and said, "But you can't leave. If you leave, you can never return." Urashima said, "Well, I've got to go. It's not right. I've got to go and explain. I've got to go and apologise for being away so long." The prince and princess could see he was set in his view, so they accompanied him down to the beach where his boat was still stored. They saw him into the boat and called the turtle to see him back to his home in Japan. Just before he left, they gave him a small black lacquered box tied shut with a red ribbon. And they said to him, "This box will keep you safe. Keep it about your person and you'll be safe forever." He thanked them and he slid the box into his pocket. Urashima took up the oars and he rowed and he rowed and he rowed. And eventually he came back to the same beach that he left some 3 weeks before. Swiftly getting out of his boat and tying it up, saying thank you and goodbye to the turtle, he rushed along the beach. As he rushed along the beach in a hurry to get to his parents' home, passed one or two people. And he thought to himself, "This is strange. I know everybody who lives in our village, and I don't recognise these people. And they've got really weird clothes on." But he was in too much of a rush to investigate further. Then he noticed the mountainside, which was always green and lush and full with trees, was now just slate grey and the oddest patch of mud. And again, he thought it strange, but didn't have time to investigate. He soon got to the village and the houses started. And the houses were strange. They were taller, bigger than the ones he remembered. But he was determined not to be distracted and go straight to his parents' home. When he got to the place where his parents' home had been, there was nothing but a meadow. He stood in the middle of the meadow, dumbfounded, wondering what had gone on. And it so happened an old man was passing the meadow at the time. And he shouted to the old man, old man, do you know where the Taro family lived? They always lived here." And the old man stopped and looked and thought for a moment and said, "I've lived in the village since I was a boy, and I've never heard of such a family. Good day to you." So he turned to walk away. Then he turned back and said, "Well, hang on a minute. When I was a child, my grandfather told me a tale that his grandfather had told him of a family that lived in this area about 300 years ago. And they had a son, an only son, who one day, on a brilliant summer's day, when the sea was as calm as a mill pond, sailed out to fish and never came home. If that's the family you're looking for, I suggest you go and look in the graveyard in the farthest corner where the oldest graves are." Urashima thanked him and rushed off to the graveyard. He followed his advice and went to the oldest corner. And there happened to be a set of 3 graves in that corner. He rubbed off the moss of the first grave, and it was his mother's name. He rubbed the moss off the second grave, and sure enough, it was his father's name. He rubbed the moss off the third grave. It was his name, and below his name it said, "Beloved son, lost at sea." And sure enough, the date was from 300 years ago. A tear fell down his cheek. And then a thought came to him, the box. So he took the box out of his pocket and looked at it and said, "Well, it's kept me safe, but what I really want is answers. So I need to open the box because I'm sure that's where the answers lay." So he undoes the ribbon that's tying the box, and he very carefully and very slowly opens it. As he opens it, a purple mist swirls out around his face, and as he opens it wider, there's more mist. So he has to wait a moment for the mist to clear. And when it clears, he sees a reflection of his face from an inlaid mirror in the top of the box. His dark black hair is going grey before his very eyes. Around his eyes, wrinkles are forming as he looks. And then a third tooth goes loose and then falls out and dribbles to the floor. He looks down in shock and horror at his teeth that lay on the floor. And as he lifts his gaze back up, his gaze passes his fingers, which are turning to dust as he looks at them. And before he can think or look anywhere else, his whole body disintegrates into dust, landing on the grave that had been waiting for him for 300 years, with the only remaining item being the black lacquered box. Thank you.